Thank you very much for coming here. Good afternoon. As Victor said, I'm Captain Dale, representing the Vice Division. To my right is Lieutenant Jessica Anderson, who heads our human trafficking unit. The reason we wanted to do this press conference today is because we had a human trafficking case that was so egregious and so notable for the violence and the situations with these women that we wanted to make it known to the public. Probably a couple months ago, the human trafficking had received a tip, an outcry from a victim stating that a suspect was pimped and was beating women and creating violence towards these women. And so they followed up, and the men and women of the Vice Division Human Trafficking Unit did great work and kept following some sources, kept investigating, found more witnesses came forward, more victims came forward, and they were able to identify a suspect by the name of Marquise Holmes. And this suspect had been trafficking women for a period of approximately 2 to 3 years. He was very violent with them. He strangled one of the women. He ran over another with a car. He threatened family members and a 6-month-old child of one of the women. These women worked in Houston as well as nationwide. So he had approximately 10 women that we know of working for him. And it was just a matter of time before this was going to escalate, where one of these women was probably going to get hurt, murdered, or anything worse than that. And they focused on this guy. They arrested this suspect. They received 6 felony counts, with the best one being continuously trafficking of a person, which carries a life sentence. We had aggravating promotion of prostitution, compelling prostitution. And the reason we're highlighting this case, again, as I mentioned, was so egregious and so violent what this suspect was doing. And we want to say a warning to others that this kind of thing, that these pimps that are running these women, we're coming after you. The exploitation of women and men in this city has got to stop. And it's just a testament to the fine work of the Human Trafficking Unit and all the men and women of the Vice Division, that they work on these cases daily, all the time. But this one was just so offensive and so time-consuming, and the violence perpetrated against these women, that we wanted to come forward with this. I want to send a message too, that the ones that are soliciting the prostitutes, the demand side, the men and others that are picking these prostitutes up, you're not innocent in all of this. We're focusing on you as well. Anybody can hear this case and know that they think it's okay to, I'm an innocent victim, I'm just picking up one of these prostitutes. These women are not working on their own free will. This isn't their own, this is what I'm doing this voluntarily to make a living. They are majority of them are work with a handler, a pimp. And if they don't do what this pimp says, then, violence and other, things worse can occur. I mean, this guy was selling them they had to do 10 acts per day, if not more, for $1,500 an act. And if they didn't, violent consequences came from this pimp. So I'm just putting that as a warning that, hey, the exploitation of women and men in this city is not going to happen. We're going to find you, and the ones that are picking them up and propagating the prostitution in the city, we're going to get you as well. Do you have any questions at this moment?
How long
Yes, ma'am.
did the investigation go on for?
The investigation went only on for a couple of months. They did just a fantastic job of following up with the other victims and connecting them all to this one suspect.
And how old were the victims?
They were adult teenagers. We're looking at 17 over. There were no juveniles involved.
He was arrested last week. What were the circumstances of
The details of how they...
There was an arrest warrant.
So you just picked a traffic stop, or?
We went to his house.
And you said some of them were working nationwide for him. Would he put them on planes, or did they take a bus somewhere?
All sorts of transportation. We've worked areas in the west side of town where they're driving them down in a bus, and then we'll let them out on a bus, and then and then they come by and pick them up again. So they usually use vehicular transportation for that.
Were they working like Bisnet, west side, southwest side, or were they?
Some of that out there in the west side of town, but in other areas as well. They were doing street as well as going to hotels and things of that nature.
How would he get these women to work for him?
Well, then you're looking at an aspect of it. I mean, they prey and feed on the most vulnerable. So when you're looking at women that they use social media, they go to. We've had situations where they'll go to malls or high schools and things and recruit, and it's just what they do, and they prey on them, and they, it's human trafficking is probably the hardest crime to get a conviction of, because most of these women are scared to come forward. They're scared of what's going to happen to them, and some of them have been brainwashed to think that, well, he's my boyfriend, or I'm doing this on my own will, but they're not, and so it's hard to get that from them.
The tip, was it from one of the victims or somebody who knew what was going on?
It was from one of the victims.
What prompted her after all this time to?
I think, we have the National Human Trafficking Hotline. We also have our Vice Division phone number that anytime you can call. But it gets to the point where sometimes it takes a courageous and brave woman to say, or man, to say, hey, I'm done with this, I want out. And they make the phone call, and then we follow up immediately to make sure those victims are taken out of that situation. We interview them, and we make sure that we put them with some resources to help them as they continue forward through the process.
Were you able to talk to all 10 of the women that he allegedly employed?
No.
We've talked to most,
Most.
and we've recently discovered there are about 9 more.
So as many as almost 20?
There could be more than that too. So it's never just a set number. I mean, it just takes one woman, and then and these are such labor intensive cases to work, because they have to follow up and they connect and interview them and build a case against these suspects.
What side of town were they mainly at? Or?
They were really all over, weren't they?
Yeah, they're Bissonnette, but all over.
And you said they even threatened a woman and her, what did you say?
She had a 6-month-old, and he, if you didn't make this amount of money, they're not going to harm. They use threats and force and coercion in order to get them to do what they, the suspects want.
And the women were making $1,500 an act?
It was $1,500 per sexual act.
Per day.
Yes, or per day. Excuse me.
Per day.
Yes.
So they had to bring him that much money, or else?
Or exactly. And like I said, he used violent, methods, whether it was strangulation, assault. We had one victim he ran over in a car. So.
And they had to perform at least 10 sexual acts a day?
It was, we don't know I don't know the definite number. I know as long as they had the $1,500, but it was a lot more than that. I mean, he just, they were continuously working, and so we've dealt with numerous cases where there's 10 acts, if not more, and that's what they keep. You got to keep doing this, and then there's more and more, and they get greedy, and we want more money, and it gets to the point where these poor women can't pay what he's asking for.
That's kind of high. I mean, are they like higher end prostitutes? I mean,
No, these are just, this wasn't like a high-end escort service by any means.
just
So,
working a lot.
yes.
Any other questions for Captain Dale?
How many more cases, and this might be a hard question to answer, how many more cases are like this out there? I mean, how pervasive is this problem?
It's very pervasive until we identify it in the last 10 years. That's why I'm very proud of the men and women that I work with here at the Human Trafficking, because this is all they do, night and day. They're on call all the time, working through the weekends. I mean, and we're working with Waller County, Fort Bend County, Montgomery County. It's not just a Houston problem within the city. It's right there in the suburbs as well. We've worked on homes, $500,000 townhomes that they're running these operations out of in the suburbs. We've got high schoolers that are involved in this. So, like I said, it's not an inner city problem. And these women are not kept through Houston. They work in Montgomery County. They'll work in Fort Bend County. They'll work in Galveston County. So we have to, we have a lot of interagency collaborative efforts, whether it was with Harris County and the other law enforcement entities I mentioned, in order to fight and tackle this problem. And the best way to do that is educate, empower, and equip all the citizens out there to understand what human trafficking is, how to see it, how to identify it, and how to report it.
Anything else? All right, folks, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about what the victims might be going through?
Can you get close to the mic, please?
What the victims might be going through, and what their daily existence is like?
As a victim, I don't actually know, but I would surmise that they, in lots of cases, are kept at a home or a residence or a hotel room, and they are told, you will work, you'll make this much money, whether that's on the street or by people visiting them or them visiting other people. Oftentimes, their documents are withheld, food is withheld, things of that nature to continue the forced fraud and coercion. So,
The 6-month-old baby, was he the father?
no.